In this video, which is part of the Christianity and this challenge of secularism topic, we're going to be looking at the highlighted spec points here. So the challenge of secularization, including the replacement of religion as a source of truth and moral values, the relegation of religion to the personal sphere, the rise of militant atheism and the view that religion is irrational, and we're going to look at McGrath's defense of Christianity in the Dawkins delusion as an example of a development in Christian thought. So what is secularization? Secularization is the process by which a society becomes less religious, and it can be evidenced in several different ways, such as fewer people attending acts of worship or claiming to belong to a religion, more people claiming to be atheists, and fewer features of life being directly related to religion. So Census 2021 will probably be remembered for demonstrating a sharp decline in Christianity and a sharp rise in people adopting a non-religious or secular view. This is evidence that demonstrates Britain is becoming increasingly secular. So let's think about some of the reasons why that has happened. And firstly, we can think about the replacement of religion as the source of truth and moral values, and historical changes in the role of Christianity. Let's start with the Reformation. So until the 16th century, the Church had authority over all aspects of life in the UK. But after the Protestant Reformation, the authority of the Church started to be questioned. There were two major changes. So firstly, the absolute authority of the Church was challenged by the Reformers. And secondly, the new Protestant churches actively encouraged people to study Scripture for themselves. After the Reformation, Christianity gradually started to become more of a personal choice than an automatic expectation. The Enlightenment, or the Great Age of Reason, is defined as the period of scientific, political, and philosophical debate that characterized European society from the late 17th century to the ending of the Napoleonic Wars in 1815. As a result of the Enlightenment, reason and evidence became the widely accepted routes to knowledge, and this led to religious beliefs being challenged by some scholars on the basis that they could not be supported by evidence and reason. The impact of Enlightenment thinking started the move towards the replacement of religion as the source of truth and moral values. There were also some 19th century academic challenges to Christianity. The book Das Leben Jesu by the German theologian David Strauss, which denied the miracles of Jesus, damaged the faith of many educated Victorians who started to question the truth behind Christian belief. Charles Darwin's book on the origin of species seemed to disprove creation and substituted the new idea of evolution. This caused many Christians to question the truth that came from the Bible and view scientific theories as the truth instead. There were also some 20th century challenges. The number of regular Christian worshippers in the UK began to further decline in the 20th century for a number of reasons. Number one, the impact of World War I and World War II. The suffering experienced during the wars caused many people to turn away from Christianity and from religion altogether. Number two, increasing materialism. Capitalism led to an increasing focus on materialism and the acquisition of wealth rather than on religion. Number three, ethical challenges. Christianity struggled to come to terms and adapt to modern developments such as contraception, abortion, and same-sex relationships. And number four, divided attitudes. So in the 1960s, some Christians started to formally adopt a more liberal view to adapt and change, and started to view many Bible stories as being symbolic rather than literally true. But others reacted against this and adopted a fundamentalist view, preaching the need to view the Bible as a literal truth. As science helps people to understand more of the world in which they live, it can be argued that the place in society for organised religion is becoming more limited. When people are in search of truth today, they're typically drawn towards the sciences, evidence, and reason, rather than looking for answers in formal religion that tend to be less clear and quantifiable. For a long time, people relied on organised religion to find answers to the questions they had about morality. But today, many people in the UK have shifted their focus to non-religious approaches to truth and morality instead. One example of a secular approach is secular humanism. The rise of militant atheism has also been a significant challenge to Christianity. So militant atheism is the view that religion is irrational. And here we have an explanation of atheism by a leading philosopher today. Atheism, which is actively hostile to religion, I would call militant. To be hostile in this sense requires more than just a strong disagreement with religion. It requires something verging on hatred and is characterized by a desire to wipe out all forms of religious beliefs. Militant atheists tend to make one or both of two claims that atheists do not. The first is that religion is demonstrably false or nonsense, and the second is that it is usually or always harmful. In contrast to atheism, which simply denies the existence of God, militant atheists view religious beliefs as irrational and suggest that those who believe in the existence of God, the miraculous, and life after death are insane or stupid. Militant atheists typically view religion as the cause of war and as being a threat to education and rational thought. One of the most famous militant atheists is the evolutionary scientist Richard Dawkins. So the development in militant atheism in the past 50 years or so seems to have been prompted by a couple of things. So number one, emphasis on Darwinian evolution by scientists such as Richard Dawkins to actively counter religious views. And number two, horror at the rise in religious fundamentalism and religious fanaticism. The rise of militant atheism challenges Christianity because militant atheists like Richard Dawkins argue that religion is irrational, dangerous, and unscientific. The militant atheist position of Richard Dawkins suggests that religion is both irrational and the cause of harm. In his famous book, The God Delusion, Dawkins makes the following points. Religious belief is a virus that has spread around the world after starting from a primitive, basic error in reasoning. Religion is not necessary for people to live ethically. Religion undermines science and the truth and leads to bigotry and extremism. Religion is a divisive influence in society. When children are taught to be religious at school, in their faith community, or by their parents, it is tantamount to abuse. And people should look to science for answers to big questions rather than to religion. Some of Dawkins' most controversial statements about religion are, I am against religion because it teaches us to be satisfied with not understanding the world. What has theology ever said that is of the smallest use to anybody? I once wrote that anybody who believes the world is only 6,000 years old is either ignorant, stupid, insane, or wicked, and the Enlightenment is under threat. So is reason, so is truth, so is science, especially in the schools of America. How have Christians responded to militant atheism? So many Christians actually feel as if the God and religion that are the target for attack from militant atheists such as Richard Dawkins are not what they actually believe in. Although most Christians do not take all of the biblical text literally, militant atheists such as Richard Dawkins often focus their criticism on fundamentalist literal interpretations of Scripture, in addition to criticizing God as an imaginary being similar to the tooth fairy. Christians may argue that the criticisms of militant atheists are flawed as they are made against an overly simplistic understanding of Christianity and ignore the complex and diverse nature of belief and practice in mainstream Christianity. Militant atheists such as Dawkins also tend to focus on the negative effects of religion. Irishmen blow themselves up in his name. Arabs blow themselves up in his name. Imams and ayatollahs oppress women in his name, while ignoring the positive impact of religion and discounting the fact that atrocities have also been committed in the name of atheism. Although militant atheists such as Richard Dawkins argue that religion is dangerous and incompatible with science, Christian scholars such as John Polkinghorne actually disagree with this point. Polkinghorne wrote, "If we're seeking to serve the God of truth, then we should really welcome truth from whatever source it comes. We shouldn't fear the truth. Some of it will be from science, obviously, but by no means all of it. It will sometimes be perplexing how this bit of truth relates to that bit of truth. We know that within science itself often enough, and we find it outside of science as well. The crucial thing is to be honest. So lastly, we're going to just take a quick look at how Alistair McGrath, the scholar, has defended Christianity against the rise of militant atheism in his text, The Dawkins Delusion. Alistair McGrath is a Northern Irish theologian, and having previously identified as an atheist, he became a Christian while studying at Oxford. McGrath highlighted that Dawkins' criticisms of Christianity are directed at fundamentalist, creationist Christianity, but ignore liberal, non-literal interpretations of the faith, and so demonstrate only a very limited understanding of Christianity. McGrath also accuses Dawkins himself of a type of fundamentalism, as illustrated here in this quote. Dawkins is clearly entrenched in his own peculiar version of a fundamentalist dualism. Dawkins seems to view things from within a highly polarized worldview that is no less apocalyptic and warped than that of the religious fundamentalisms he wishes to eradicate. So how did McGrath respond to Dawkins' criticisms of Christianity? Well, let's have a look at this table. So the Dawkins view, religious belief is childish, science offers the answers to big questions, and people who believe in God have a lower IQ and are clearly deluded. McGrath's response is to say, there are many prominent academics who profess to have a faith in God, and therefore faith is not childish or delusional. To Dawkins' claim that religious people are irrational, McGrath argues that Dawkins deliberately portrays a misleading portrait of religious believers, the pathological as if it were normal, the fringe as if it were the centre. Dawkins claims that science provides solid explanations backed up by evidence, whereas religion does not. McGrath counters, stating that Christianity is not there to offer an explanation of anything, and that Dawkins simply doesn't understand religion. Dawkins claims that the cosmological and teleological arguments don't prove that God exists, and there is no direct scientific material evidence that proves God was involved in the creation of the world. McGrath responded by highlighting that philosophical arguments confirm that God designed and created the universe, and that there is no direct scientific evidence that proves evolution started all on its own. Dawkins claims that science and religion are incompatible, but McGrath claims that science does not eliminate faith because there are some questions which can't be answered by science. Finally, Dawkins claims that religion stirs up fanaticism, leading to violence, and that atheists would never act in such a violent way. McGrath counters this by highlighting that Christianity is intrinsically a faith of peace. It's humans who have acted violently, disobeying or distorting Jesus' teachings. McGrath also highlights that some of the most violent atrocities in history were actually carried out by atheists.